Hello, welcome to my channel, Learn English in Easy Way. To improve your English skills, reading, listening, understanding and speaking in accordance with your level, I combine short stories in one video. Improve your English with audio stories, B1, B2. You will also have more videos on other levels and subjects later. Let's start. Just as good as the original? In 1979, the painter Tom Keating was arrested and charged with forgery. He was accused of faking and selling a painting by Samuel Palmer, an early 19th century British artist. Everyone in the art world was shocked when Keating admitted faking more than 2,000 paintings by various artists over a period of 20 years. He couldn't remember the exact number, nor could he remember whom he had sold them to, which meant that many of his fakes couldn't be traced. As a young man, Keating had been employed by art dealers to make copies of paintings by well-known artists whose original paintings sold for high prices. He was paid very little for this work and assumed that his paintings were also being sold for low prices because they were copies. He then discovered by chance that the dealers who employed him were selling his copies as originals for hundreds of times the price that they paid him. This experience made him very angry, and he decided to teach them a lesson in his own way. He set about producing large numbers of fakes by over 100 artists, as he was sure that most art dealers and art critics couldn't tell the difference between the genuine and the fake. Keating had a rather casual attitude to his paintings. He often gave them away or sold them cheaply. Many unsuspecting people thought they had picked up a bargain from him. In fact, he hadn't made himself rich, but he took great delight in fooling so-called experts. What he wrote on the canvas also reflected his sense of humor. Before starting to paint, he would write the word fake or Keating, or sometimes a vulgar word. The word would be covered by paint but would show up if anyone took the trouble to X-ray the paintings. Having X-ray paintings, some famous museums discreetly removed Keatings from their walls. Although he faked paintings by many artists, Keating specialized in the works of Samuel Palmer. Unfortunately, Palmer's genuine output was quite small, much less than Keating's, and soon the number of previously unknown or just discovered Palmers coming onto the market began to arouse suspicion. He admitted in court that he was rather ashamed of the particular painting he had been charged with faking. It wasn't up to his usual standard. He admitted everything and took great delight in showing the greed of the dealers. They had once exploited him and cheated their customers. He didn't go to the prison, as the charges against him were dropped because of his poor health. After the trial, which had received a lot of publicity, he became very well known and appeared on television. He actually painted a Samuel Palmer in about half an hour in television studio, with whole process being filmed. Later, he had his own television series in which he taught his painting techniques. There is no doubt that Keating had remarkable talent, and at the end of his life he received many orders for his own work. Nowadays, even his fakes, sell for quite high prices. The healing power of music. Marianne Strobelli severely injured injured in a car accident, lay in the operating room of St. Luke's Hospital in Cleveland, awaiting anesthesia. Surrounded by a surgical team, Strebelli was hooked up to a computer that monitored her heart rate and brain waves. She was also hooked up by earphones to a tape recorder playing Vivaldi's The Four Seasons. During the operation, the surgical team listened to Mozart and Brahms from another tape recorder. Music reduces staff tension in the operating room, says Dr. Clyde Lyle Nash Jr., Strebelli's surgeon, and also relaxes the patient. Nash is one of my physicians around the country who have found that music, used with conventional therapies, can heal the sick. Dr. Matthew H. M. Lee, acting director of the Rusk Rehabilitation Institute at New York University Medical Center, adds, "We have seen confirmation of the benefits of music in helping to avoid serious complications during illness, enhancing patients' well-being, and shortening hospital stays." How does music help? Some studies show it can regulate blood pressure and respiration rates, thus lessening psychological responses to stress. Other studies suggest music may increase production of endorphins, natural pain relievers, and SIGA, salivary immunoglobulin A. SIGA speeds healing, reduces the danger of infection, and controls heart rate. Music therapy is proving especially effective in three key medical areas: pain, anxiety, and depression. When I had my first baby, says Susan Kalutsky of Shaker Heights, Ohio, I was in difficult labor for 2 days. The second time around, I wanted to avoid the pain. Relaxing jazz calmed her in delivery room. Bach and Beethoven paced her during contractions. Finally, the closing movement of Brahms' Symphony No. 1 energized her while she was giving birth. The music produced a much easier experience, she claims. The amazing power of music as a way of therapy can also be observed on cancer patients during their bout with the illness. These people often brood in their hospital rooms, refusing to talk with doctors and nurses. The music therapy helps them to have a positive outlook. This makes it easier for them to communicate and encourages them to cooperate more in their treatment, says Dr. Nathan A. Berger, director of the Ireland Cancer Center at University Hospitals of Cleveland. Mental, emotional, and physical handicaps, the Iowa School in Rockville, Illinois, helps youngsters with developmental problems ranging from emotional disturbances to mental retardation, autism, and learning disabilities. Ruth Lee Adler, a music therapist for more than 20 years, used songs and dance to help the children learn and cope. While the seriously handicapped may ignore other kinds of stimulation, they respond to music, she says. Neurological disorders, Dr. Oliver Sacks, whose work with sleeping sickness victims led to the book and movie Awakeness, reports that patients with neurological disorders who cannot talk or move are often able to sing and sometimes even dance to music. The power of music is remarkable in such people, Sacks observes. In a group session for elderly patients at Beth Abraham Hospital in New York City, a 70-year-old stroke victim sat by himself, never speaking, one day when therapist Connie Tomenio played an old Jewish folk song on her accordion, the man hummed. Tomanio played the tune regularly after that. Finally, the man sang some of the verse. Before you knew it, says Tomanio, he was talking. Few people understand the therapeutic powers of music better than Cleveland music therapist DeFerry Lane. 10 years ago, during her own struggle with cancer, singing helped her relax and take her mind off the disease. Since then, she was used that experience to help others. Music is not magic, says the 44-year-old therapist with a warm smile and rich soprano voice, but in a hospital or at home, for young people or older ones, it can be a potent medicine that helps us all. Of course, music's therapeutic benefits aren't only confined to those who are ill. Apart from the simple enjoyment that music provides, we would see how much it could help us in our daily lives. It is obvious that during the day, music gives our minds a break as it lets us focus on something else for a few minutes and helps us to cope with daily problems more effectively. To gain the full benefit of music, all we have to do is to work it into our daily schedule. Picking apples, a New England tradition. Throughout New England, people know that fall has arrived when the Macintosh apples begin to turn red in orchards in early September. After the Mac apples come the Cordons, the Empires, the Macoons, and finally the Golden Delicious. All through September and October, the aroma of ripe, fully grown apples fills the air on sunny days, an invitation to come picking. A day of apple picking is, in fact, a popular way to spend a fall day in New England. From Connecticut to Maine, it is generally possible to find an orchard within an hour's drive, and the trip is well worth the time. Not only will it provide you with plenty of the freshest apples to be found, but it will also give you a chance to take in some sunshine and autumn scenery and get some exercise. The picking is usually best done by adults. Children shouldn't climb up into trees and risk hurting themselves and damaging the trees. Younger members of the family can have fun just romping around the orchard. The picking may not take long, 2 hours at most, but many of the orchard owners now offer other kinds of entertainment. At some orchards, you can go for pony rides or ride on a hay-filled wagon. You may be able to watch a horse show or visit the cows or sheep in the pasture. You may also decide to take a hike and have a picnic along a country lane. Some orchards have set up refreshment stands in their bowls where you can taste local products such as apple cider and homemade baked goods. A few hints. First, call before you go. Check the local newspaper for the names and locations of orchards which offer you pick your own apples. Then phone to find out their hours, since they may change from one orchard to another. You should also ask about the rules regarding bags and read containers. Most orchards provide bags, but a few do not, and some will allow only certain types of containers. Second, check in when you arrive. Before you start picking, you should check with the orchard owner about which varieties are ripe in that period and which parts of the orchard are open for picking. Respect the owner's privacy and do not go where you are not allowed. Third, pick carefully. When you pick the apples, trade them gently. Some orchard owners advise pickers to trade the apples as though they were eggs. If they bruise, they will spoil more quickly. The technique for picking is simple. Hold the apple firmly but not too tightly and twist it off the branch, taking care to leave the stem attached, since removal of the stem will also cause knot. Fourth, don't waste apples. Be careful to pick only the apples you need. You may be tempted and pick too many of the delicious looking fruit since you are attracted to it, and then find that apples go bad before you can eat them. Since the apple season lasts for almost 2 months, you can always return for another load of apples later. Fifth, keep what you pick. Once you take an apple off the tree, you must keep it. It's not fair to the orchard owner to leave apples on the ground where they will quickly spoil. Sixth, store your apples properly. Put your apples in the refrigerator as soon as you get them. Studies by the Vermont Department of Agriculture have shown that apples last 7 times longer when kept under refrigeration. If you do pick too many apples to eat in a week or two, you could try freezing them to use later in pies and cakes. Simply peel, core, and slice them, and then put them in an airtight plastic bags, then may be kept in the freezer for up to a year. The Shakers, Shake It Up, Baby, Twist and Shout, was sung by Beatles, but it was practiced almost 200 years earlier by a religious group called the Unified Society of Believers. This religious group, led by Anne Lee, came to America from Manchester, England in 1774 looking for a place to freely practice their religious belief. Eventually, they became known as the Shakers because the believers worshipped by singing, dancing and whirling around. The Shakers were a peaceful community that welcomed people of all races. They were against war and lived in their own villages separate from the rest of society. They lived communally, that is, sharing their property and working for the common good. The qualities they admired were kindness, generosity, modesty, purity, cleanliness, and love for humanity. Their villages of plain, white houses were very neat. Even the roads were swept clean. The Shakers are probably best known for their celibacy and hard work. Single men and women didn't marry. Married couples who joined the Shaker community had to live in separate houses. In the Shaker community, males and females lived and worked separately as brothers and sisters. They never shook hands or touched each other in any way. When conversation between a man and a woman was necessary, it was done in the company of others. Males and females sat opposite each other when they came together once a day for conversation and singing. Even when they danced and whirled around during worship, men and women always kept their distance. As might be expected, the Shaker style of dressing was modest, simple and plain, and their clothes were dark in color. The women combed their hair back under a cap and wore long dresses with a cloth that covered the chest. Men wore dark pants and simple coats. It was extremely unusual to see these celibate people wearing bright or attractive clothing. Put your hands to work and your hearts to God, said Anne Lee to her followers. The Shakers too took this seriously and worked very hard. In order to be self-sufficient, the Shakers grew their own food, wove their own clothes, and made their own tools, utensils, and handicrafts. They made chairs, bottoms, tops, baskets, smoking pipes, pans, brooms, brushes, hats, shoes, and hand-woven coats. Although simple and plain, these were of the highest quality. Not only were the Shakers industrious, but they were creative and inventive as well. Unlike some other religious groups, the Shakers liked technology and labor-saving devices. Their long list of inventions and improvements includes such items as the first garden seeds packaged in paper and machines, such as a revolving oven and a wood-burning stove, although it may seem that the Shaker life was all rules, work and worship, it was not without joy. They spent pleasant hours picking fruit, walking in the woods, going for carriage rides, and laughing together in separate groups, of course. Over the years, the original Shaker community in New York expanded to 24 scattered communities among 8 states in eastern US. Many people were attracted to their peaceful ways and clean, crime-free villages. Eventually, the Shakers paid the price for their celibacy. They didn't have any children to carry on their traditions and beliefs, and their numbers became fewer. Today, their villages are museums and their handicrafts are items for collectors. Japanese culture. Japan is an unusual mixture of traditional and ultra-modern. Although it looks quite Western, it is still Oriental in many ways. Lifestyle. A lot of Japanese households consist of both one or more traditional Japanese-style rooms with tatami floors and modern rooms that usually have wooden floors. Tatami mats on the floor are made of straw and measure roughly 180 cm cross 90 cm. You should always take off your slippers and step on tatami mats only in socks or barefoot in order to protect them from damage. In traditional homes, people sleep on the floor on a futon mattress which is laid on the floor only during the night and kept in a closet during the daytime so the bedroom can also function as a living or dining room. To relax at the end of a hard day, they enjoy a long soak bath in the ofuro, the traditional Japanese hot bath, which is usually next to the kitchen. Food and eating. In Japan, some restaurants and private houses have Japanese-style tables and cushions on the floor. In a traditional Japanese house, a visitor should also expect to eat on the floor on a cushion in front of a low table. The Japanese usually eat with chopsticks, but they have knives and forks for visitors. The Japanese say that most food must be tasted with the eyes before it is tasted with the mouth. The Japanese cuisine offers a great variety of dishes and regional specialties such as rice dishes, seafood dishes, noodle dishes, and soybean dishes. Rice dishes have until recently been the most important food in the Japanese cuisine. Despite changes in eating patterns over the last decades and slowly decreasing rice consumption in recent years, rice remains one of the most important ingredients in Japan today and can be found in numerous dishes. Sushi is the most famous Japanese dish outside of Japan, and one of the most popular dishes among the Japanese themselves, who usually enjoy sushi on special occasions. The Japanese have a tea ceremony called sado. It's a ritual way of preparing and drinking tea. The custom has been strongly influenced by Zen Buddhism. Nowadays, the tea ceremony is a relatively popular kind of hobby. Many Japanese who are interested in their own culture take tea ceremony lessons with a teacher. Tea ceremonies are held in traditional Japanese rooms in cultural community centers or private houses. Traditional Japanese dresses. Kimonos are traditional Japanese clothing. Kimonos are made of silk and are usually very expensive. Nowadays, they are worn at formal or traditional occasions. such as funerals, weddings, or tea ceremonies. Kimonos can still sometimes be seen in daily life. Kimonos differ in style and color depending on the occasion on which they are worn and the age and marital status of the person wearing them. To put on a kimono needs some practice, especially tying the belt obi alone is difficult, so many people require assistance. Wearing a kimono properly includes a proper hairstyle, traditional shoes, socks, and a small handbag for women. If you enjoyed the video, please hit a like and subscribe to my channel.